Following the news that Jared Kushner appears to have cashed in on his time in the White House with a $2 billion investment from none other than Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, there have been calls from watchdog groups and top Democrats for a criminal investigation to be launched. Senator Elizabeth Warren is urging the DOJ to get involved and take a hard look.
Is there a role for DOJ or Congress or any entity to look into this, to scrub this?
I think there's a question that the Department of Justice should take a really hard look to see if that fits within any of our current. I mean, it is a kind of shaggy dog version of how you get to what's going on here. Does it violate any of our criminal laws? And I'd want to take a hard look at that.
With me now is Tim O'Brien, senior columnist for Bloomberg Opinion, and Vicky Ward, investigative journalist and author of Kushner, Inc., Greed, Ambition, Corruption, The Extraordinary Story of Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. Thank you both for being here. Vicky, I want to go to you first. Give us some insight, if you can. Why would the Saudi sovereign fund, this Saudi fund, give $2 billion to Jared Kushner, who has no experience as that level of an investor? Why did they give him the money?
Well, so that is a great question. As you say, it's not because of his track record in private equity, because he doesn't have one. What I reported in my Substack newsletter this week, Vicky Ward Investigates, is that there are questions about Jared Kushner's role right at the beginning of the Trump administration in actually helping Mohammed bin Salman get his job as crown prince. From where he went on to do a lot of things, including the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, the roundup at the Ritz-Carlton, the blockade of Qatar, where the United States has our air base, that could be deemed to be not only against American values, but against American national security. But MBS was not crown prince when Trump came into office. I report, and I have produced evidence in legal papers that Jared Kushner and MBS were discussing the fact that there was a problem around MBS succeeding in Saudi Arabia because the U.S. intelligence agency backed his cousin, Mohammed bin Nayef, who has since been disappeared, who is an American hero, who was given a medal by the CIA for saving American lives. This was the man who was crown prince. This was the man our intelligence agencies wanted to become the ruler of Saudi Arabia. He was a moderate man. This is the man who has since been deposed and now disappeared. That could be a very big reason why Mohammed bin Salman might want to pay Jared Kushner $2 billion. And, I think that questions should be asked.
Yes, I think they absolutely should. I wish I could say I was surprised, Tim O'Brien, to hear this about Jared Kushner. But this is a guy who, one of the things that Vicky Ward talked about there was this blockade of Qatar. I still am old enough to remember when Jared Kushner owed a $1 billion balloon payment on 666 Fifth Avenue in New York and didn't have any way of paying it. And then suddenly Qatar, who was being asked to give him the money, demanded to give him the money, they get blockaded. And then all of a sudden, after he does this little secret trip to Saudi Arabia, no one knew he was going. All of this happens to Qatar, and then magic, he gets the money. There's a lot of nefarious stuff that appears, at least appearance-wise, looks shady and dirty. Your thoughts? Uh-oh. I think Tim has frozen. I'm going to stay with you for a minute, Vicky, while we fix Tim's connection. But I'll say the same. I'll ask you the same question. There's a lot about the way that Jared Kushner operates, particularly when he's operating with his friends in Saudi Arabia, and the way that they treated Qatar, that seems incredibly dirty.
Absolutely. Well, in fact, you mentioned earlier, Joy, that MBS used to describe Jared Kushner as being in his pocket. When the Qatari deal went down, he told people, he described Jared Kushner as the double dipper. Implication being that he was taking money from the Qataris as well, allegedly. Jared Kushner has always denied this, from the Saudi Arabia. The big question here is, if there was a quid pro quo, when did it start? And could it be proven? And that is obviously what I think Elizabeth Warren wants the Justice Department to look into. But there's no reason Congress shouldn't look into it as well.
Yeah, indeed. And Tim is back. Technical. Listen, this is the modern era. Technical difficulties happen. But Tim, I want to let you finish your answer and also weave into it the fact that this was a guy, Jared Kushner, who couldn't get a security clearance when he first got into his new job he didn't qualify for. Go ahead.
And you mentioned, 666 Fifth Avenue at the top of this segment, and a reminder is that was a disastrous investment. Jared Kushner does not have a strong track record as an investor. So there's a real issue as to why the Saudis would put this much money behind him to begin with. And there's only one reason. It's influence peddling. The Trump administration did a number of favors for the Saudis while Kushner was still an advisor to Donald Trump. They took the Saudi side in the Yemen conflict. They overrode a congressional ban on arms sales to the Saudis. And then, as you mentioned as well, Jared Kushner coached MBS on how to deal with the fallout from the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. And they did that over WhatsApp, off standard government channels. They now have him basically in their pocket, I think, if Donald Trump runs for president again, which I think it's highly likely he will, and he becomes president again. But the Saudis now have a person in the White House who's there to do their bidding. He's already demonstrated he will. They now have financial hooks into him. Early on, not only did members of Trump's White House recognize Jared Kushner as a national security risk, there were leaked intercepts from a number of intelligence agencies in the Middle East who had all identified Jared Kushner as touchable. He was someone that they thought was vulnerable because he wasn't particularly bright, because he wasn't particularly shrewd, and he was an easy mark for them to put their finger on. If what's happened now with the Saudis looks like Jared Kushner's cashing in, it's absolutely because he's cashing in. Is it a payoff? That needs to be explored. The problem is there are no clear laws he's violated. The current ethics laws don't prevent someone from leaving the White House and lobbying on behalf of a federal government. They're not allowed to, represent other domestic interests, but they have free reign with foreign governments. So I'm not sure what law he's broken. It begs us to establish an emoluments clause for this kind of behavior after people leave the White House.
Well, the other emoluments clause has no power because Donald Trump used the White House basically as a piggy bank the whole time. So did Steve Mnuchin's out there cashing in. They're all cashing in. I think we need to change a whole lot of our laws because they ain't working. Tim O'Brien, Vicky Ward, thank you both very much.